What happens when two of country music's biggest stars collide on live television? A routine daytime interview turned into a full-blown showdown between Keith Urban and Kelly Clarkson. And millions are still talking about it. It all began like any other segment on the Kelly Clarkson Show. Keith was there to promote his new album, share a few behind-the-scenes stories, and charm Kelly's loyal audience. But within minutes, the lighthearted tone vanished. Kelly leaned forward with her trademark smile. "So, Keith, I have to ask, there's been a lot of talk lately about authenticity in country music. Some say certain artists, yourself included, have strayed too far from the genre's roots. What do you think?" The shift in Keith's expression was instant. His easy grin faded. His fingers tapped once against the armrest. "Well, Kelly, that's quite a loaded question. What exactly are you getting at?" Kelly pressed on, seemingly unaware of the growing tension. She referenced a recent article questioning whether Keith's collaborations meant he'd crossed over entirely into pop. The audience sensed the change in the air. Keith sat back, his voice now edged with steel. "I find it interesting you'd bring that up without asking if I even wanted to discuss it. This feels less like an interview and more like an ambush." Kelly, caught off guard, tried to smooth things over. "Keith, I didn't mean it that way. I'm just talking about how the genre's evolved." But Keith wasn't letting go. His tone sharpened, his Australian accent cutting through the studio. "You mean address the idea that success somehow makes you less authentic? That because I don't fit neatly into someone's box. I'm not real country anymore." Kelly shifted in her seat. "That's not what I'm saying. I respect your music." Keith interrupted, leaning in. "When was the last time someone questioned your authenticity as a pop artist? I'll bet it doesn't happen much. Country music loves policing its own. God forbid we try to grow or evolve." The back and forth escalated. Kelly's voice grew firmer. "Maybe the issue isn't my question, Keith. Maybe it's how you're choosing to take it." Keith's jaw tightened. "So now it's my fault. I'm the problem because I don't appreciate being blindsided on your show." "That's rich, Kelly." The crew exchanged uneasy glances as the atmosphere thickened. Kelly took a breath, trying to de-escalate. Keith wasn't having it. "You had that article ready. You expected a safe, diplomatic answer. I'm not playing that game." Kelly's patience finally snapped. "You're being unfair and a little paranoid. I asked a simple question. If you're this defensive, maybe you should ask yourself why." That was the breaking point. Keith shot to his feet, his chair nearly toppling backward, the studio frozen in stunned silence. The studio audience collectively gasped. Keith's voice cut through the silence. "Defensive. You think I'm being defensive? Lady, I've been in this business longer than you've been singing professionally. I don't need to defend my music to anyone, especially not to someone who's never spent a day in country music's boots." Kelly's posture stiffened, flashing. "Excuse me. I may not be a country artist, Keith, but I know music. I know authenticity. And right now, what I'm seeing is someone so insecure about their own choices. They can't handle a simple question without melting down." The room went dead silent except for Keith's slow, heavy breathing and the faint hum of the studio lights. Even the crew had stopped moving. Keith leaned forward, his voice low and dangerous. "You want to talk about insecurity, Kelly? Let's talk about a talk show host who tears down successful artists just to feel relevant. Someone who rehearsed that question in the mirror so it would sound innocent, and then act shocked when it blows up." Kelly stood now, matching his stance across the small interview set. "You are way out of line, Keith Urban. I've never had a guest speak to me like this, and I'm not about to start tolerating it. And I've never had a host try to humiliate me on live television." Keith shot back. "So I guess we're both having firsts today." The tension was suffocating. Kelly's fists clenched at her sides. Keith's face burned red. It felt like the moment before a storm breaks. Then Kelly took a step back, her voice suddenly calm. The kind of calm that's sharper than shouting. You know what, Keith? This interview is over. Take some time to figure out why one question sent you into a tailspin. Because your reaction says a lot more about your insecurities than my question ever could. Keith let out a harsh, humorless laugh. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. You invite me on your show, try to corner me with loaded questions, and when I push back, suddenly it's all about my insecurities. No, Kelly. This is over because I don't have to sit here and listen to garbage from someone who clearly doesn't respect me or my music. Kelly's voice rose again. If you don't feel respected, maybe look at how you're treating the person who invited you here. This behavior is inappropriate and unprofessional. Keith's head snapped toward her. Unprofessional. How about ambushing a guest with a hit-piece question they weren't prepped for? How about manufacturing drama for ratings? How about sitting there pretending innocence when you knew exactly what you were doing? Kelly shook her head, her tone measured but cold. Keith, my career is built on treating guests with respect. I've never brought someone on this show to humiliate them. The fact you think that's what happened says everything about your mindset, and nothing about mine. Keith stepped closer, his words a challenge. Does it? Though. Because I'm pretty sure your producers are loving this. I'm sure they're already planning how to cut this into the most dramatic clip possible. This is exactly what you wanted when you decided to bring up that article. The accusation hung in the air like a lit fuse. Kelly's expression flickered. For a moment, hurt, before hardening back into pure fire. Kelly's face blanched at Keith's accusation. For a heartbeat, genuine hurt flickered across her features, but it vanished as quickly as it came, replaced by a look colder than anything she'd shown so far. You know what, Keith? That is absolutely disgusting. To accuse me and my team of staging you for ratings is not only wrong, it's insulting to everything I've built here. Do you really think so little of me that you'd believe I'd sabotage a guest just for drama? Keith folded his arms, staring her down. I think you're a smart businesswoman who knows exactly how this industry works. Controversy sells. You saw an opportunity to stir some with a question you knew would push my buttons. Don't play the innocent victim here. Kelly, push your buttons. Her voice brimmed with disbelief. If asking about industry trends does that, maybe you should ask yourself why you're so sensitive about your place in country music. Maybe the critics have a point if you can't even talk about it without losing your temper. The words hit like gasoline on a flame. Keith stepped closer, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. Don't you dare validate those critics. You have no idea what it's like to have your authenticity questioned every time you grow as an artist. And you have no idea what it's like to be attacked by a guest for doing your job. Kelly shot back, holding her ground. I've had legends on this show. Dolly Parton, Garth Brooks, Carrie Underwood. Do you know what they all had in common? They were gracious, professional. They didn't throw tantrums when asked about their music. Keith let out a sharp, bitter laugh. Perfect. Compare me to other artists, because that's all this industry does. Who's more authentic? Who's more traditional? Who deserves more respect? Or maybe, Kelly said coolly, it's about who handles criticism better. Who can have a professional conversation without making it personal? Because right now, Keith, you're proving every single point those critics make about you. The remark seemed to stun him. Then his expression hardened into something almost dangerous. What did you just say? I said you're proving their point. Kelly replied, the air between them thick enough to choke on. You're acting like someone who's lost touch with who they used to be. Someone who's forgotten where they came from. I haven't forgotten anything, he said through clenched teeth. But you've forgotten this is an interview, not a therapy session where you psychoanalyze my career. Who gave you the right to judge my music or my character? I'm not judging your music, Keith. I'm judging your behavior right now, and it's unacceptable. You came on my show, and when I asked a legitimate question, you turned it into a personal attack on my integrity. That's not how someone confident in their work reacts. Legitimate question. Keith's tone was dripping with contempt. When you invite someone on and immediately bring up negative criticism, that's not a question. It's an ambush. And the fact that you can't see that is the problem. Know the problem. Kelly snapped. Is that your ego can't handle any critical discussion about your work. You think success puts you above having to hear another perspective. A perspective. His voice rose. You mean people saying I'm not a real country artist anymore? That selling albums means selling out. That's not perspective. That's gatekeeping dressed up as criticism. And this, Kelly said, throwing her hands up, is exactly why I asked. Because this conversation needs to happen. But instead of engaging, you're having a full-blown meltdown on live television. A meltdown. Keith's laugh was jagged. If standing up for myself is a meltdown, I'll have one every day. I will not sit quietly while people question my authenticity. No one's asking you to sit quietly. But there's a difference between defending your work and attacking the person asking the question. Between passion and losing control because you don't like the topic. Keith raked a hand through his hair, looking for a moment almost defeated. Then his resolve returned. You know what, Kelly, I'm done. Done explaining why you were wrong. If you want to play the victim, fine. But I won't stand here and let you paint me as unstable. And what exactly are you going to do? She challenged. Because right now, you look like someone who came expecting softball questions and got rattled when I asked for a real conversation. He stared at her for a long beat, the studio silent. Then, quietly but firmly, what I'm gonna do, Kelly, is walk out of this disaster before it gets worse. I'm leaving with whatever dignity I have left after being ambushed on national television. You're not being ambushed, Keith. You're being interviewed. There's a difference, even if you can't see it. Keith gave one final bitter laugh. The saddest part. I used to respect you. I thought you understood what it meant to stay true to yourself as an artist. The words hung in the air like a death knell for any civility left between them. Kelly's expression flickered. Hurt than ice. Well, Keith, I guess the feeling's mutual. The Keith Urban I thought I was interviewing today wouldn't have turned a professional conversation into a personal attack. The Keith Urban I respected wouldn't have questioned my integrity or accused me of ambushing him. Especially not over a question about his music. Keith shook his head slowly, a trace of sadness in his eyes. You still don't get it, do you? You think this was about asking about my music. Kelly, you brought up specific criticism. You quoted an article that questioned my authenticity, live in front of an audience, without warning me. That's not curiosity. That's putting me on trial? And maybe you needed to be put on trial. Kelly snapped, her composure finally shattering. Maybe someone needed to ask you the hard questions instead of letting you coast on charm and an accent. Maybe you needed a challenge instead of another softball to promote your latest album. The audience had gone dead silent, some looking uncomfortable, others riveted by the train wreck unfolding on stage. Keith's voice dropped to a deadly calm. There it is, the real Kelly Clarkson. Not the friendly host who says she wants honest conversations, the one who thinks successful artists should be taken down a peg. That is not what I think. Kelly shot back. But I do think that if you put your work into the world, you should be able to talk about it like an adult, without falling apart. Keith's voice rose again. Adults don't ambush each other with loaded questions on live TV. Adults don't blindside guests with negative press without warning. Adults don't manufacture controversy at someone else's expense. And adults, Kelly countered, standing taller, don't throw tantrums just because they don't like where a conversation is going. Keith stepped back, as if ready to leave, but then turned with renewed fire. You want the truth. You thought you could use me to make a moment for your show. You saw the country guy as an easy mark for some fake drama. That's ridiculous, and you know it, Kelly said, voice sharp. No one here wanted drama. We respect you. The only person who made this ugly was you. Is that the story you'll tell? That I'm just some unstable artist who couldn't handle a simple question? I'll tell people the truth, that I asked about your music, and you responded by attacking me personally. Keith stared at her for a long beat. His anger remained, but disappointment had crept in beneath it. You're right about one thing. This conversation is over. Not because I can't take criticism, but because I refuse to be part of whatever this is. You can walk away, Kelly said. But running from hard conversations won't make the criticism disappear. And it won't make you look any better than you do right now. Look better. Keith gave a humorless laugh. I'm not here to look better. I'm here to keep some dignity in a situation where you've made that nearly impossible. I came here expecting a conversation about music with someone who understands what it means to be an artist. Instead, I got ambushed by someone who thinks my success makes me fair game. For the last time, Keith, you weren't ambushed. You were interviewed. There's a difference, even if your ego won't let you see it. My ego. Keith shook his head, his voice heavy with finality. This was never about ego. It was about respect. And you failed on both counts. With that, Keith Urban turned and walked off the set, his footsteps echoing through the silent studio. Kelly stood motionless, chest heaving. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper, but every word carried. Well, I guess that's a wrap on today's interview with Keith Urban. We'll be right back after this commercial break, as the lights dimmed and cameras cut. It was obvious this wasn't just the end of an interview. It was the end of a professional relationship, both bridges burned in the most public way possible.